Eu n-am link-ul.
Mie încă nu mi s-a încărcat.
Mi-l dați și mie pe grup, vă rog?
L-am dat eu.
Ok, mersi.
Se vede bine stream-ul.
Ok?
Imediat, că e delay. Imediat, că e delay. Da, se aude. Imediat, că e delay. Da, se aude. Imediat, că e delay. Da, se aude. Imediat, că e delay.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm.
Hello.
I wouldn't call myself exactly a mentor, but I am the team captain of Crack Opinion. I am here.
Imediat, că e delay.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm.
Hello.
I wouldn't call myself exactly a mentor, but I am the team captain of Crack Opinion. I am here. I am perfectly willing to discuss the effect COVID has had on the competition, and how it's had to, like, we've had to alter our procedures and general way we've worked. But I prefer a more specific question to answer. Yeah, currently, Crack Opinion is currently allowed to meet in person to build. We do have to limit exposure, so people generally, like, we're trying to keep groups of people away from each other, especially since we work in a building with other teams. Our school has other FTC teams there, so we try and so we keep all the teams as separate as possible. It is definitely, we've had to limit what times the building has been limited because they've had to clean it fairly often. So our ability to meet has been reduced, but we still can meet in person. We've had a lot of people being, like, there's been like periods of, as for several weeks where we've like had been able to meet for like a couple of weeks. Then we were all sent back home because someone on the team got COVID, and then we all had to go and just stay at our houses. So it's kind of been on and off for us. Our school, despite being in Wisconsin, which is considered in the United States is like one of the worst, it's like the worst affected by COVID. We've Our schools has actually been pretty ahead of it because we've been taking a lot of preventative measures to eliminate exposure among students. So basically, the split would basically be definitely between the building team and the programming team. Since most of the time, our programmers got like their own drivetrain together, and they just have they have all the sensors they can stick to it, and they generally work over on like one side of an area, or we try and keep like we have different meetings. So like the builders will generally try. There's like group meetings, and then there's meetings where only like one group will be meeting. So the builders will off be meeting at a certain time and programmers will meet in another. That's generally good for avoiding exposure, especially since our programming team generally also does a lot of the business stuff just because they just have more time these days because building has so much less limited like time to actually work on the robot. Generally programming is ahead. So they've also been kind of doubling as our business team this year. So building will do their own thing and the programmer will do their own thing. And then if they ever need to exchange parts or the programmer actually needs to program the robot, you can generally put the things away so you can let generally our understanding in the US is that if you let if you could let parts sit long enough, generally any viruses you got on them will go away. So you can actually have a period between like giving something to the programming team and eventually it probably won't affect them with COVID. In fact. Um, Currently, where we're at, I know it's different from in every state of the U.S. It's kind of different, but in the current Wisconsin, generally there's planned to be one remote competition, and everything else is going to be in person, but we're just severely limited numbers, so only like 12 teams, so more like instead of our usual 25-ish teams. Yeah, it looks like currently events are going to be moved back. So they were planned to be at the usual times, which is generally like January and December, but it looks like events are slowly they're being moved back to be more midwinter or spring because the COVID is just so bad and they don't want teams to be meeting each other. The actual effects on it, I think remote events, definitely you need a kind of a different, I wouldn't say it's a different strategy, but there are different things you have to think about when if one robot on the field versus four. Generally intake, like the way you position things, definitely has like if all the rings are gonna be put out on the field, just there, there's a different strategy versus having to compete with other teams for intaking versus just yourself. So there's been considerations we've had to have. You could also say for like auto, if you don't have to worry about other robots being on the field, you don't have to, like range sensors are a better choice, or they're better than they are in previous years. They're still generally considered worse than dead wheels and like the actual range, like accuracy. But I think most people, like a biggest worry with range sensors is that another robot's going to mess up your program, but if there's no other robots and everything's static, then it's a lot safer.
Yes, so we're able to meet in person at our school with the whole team. So it's a bit almost like usual with the frequency of how much we meet, but we can't really meet outside of school. So we only are limited to school hours to meet, and the events are put off. Are later in the year. So first, the first league meet in the Netherlands was around December, November, and now the first one is in February. So we have a lot more time to work on our robot, and so in that way it's better this year, but on other fields it's not. So yeah.
No, we can't
Me,
still
okay.
hear you. We still can't hear you. No, we can't hear you.
Well, the
We
fact
can hear
is, yeah, we can hear you. We can hear the other participants. Check okay, look. Come a little bit on Discord on private. I'm gonna show you how to. Partajarea la OBS. Da doar la OBS. Stai liniștit, voi. Stai liniștit. Deci, de repede partajarea la OBS. Da doar la OBS. Te ghidez eu ce trebuie să faci. De fapt, nu, dă la tot screen-ul, de fapt, ca să văd și setările, că dacă dai doar la OBS, nu o să meargă, of course.
Okay, Casimir Tech, you said that you can't go outside very much. And I was thinking, what kind of outreach activities do you do instead of that or in these conditions?
Last year and the year before that, we used to
Uite,
visit
mic auxiliary
elementary
audio. Mic
schools
auxiliary
as
audio.
outreach. So
Mic
that
auxiliary
is
audio.
not possible, but we haven't tried to contact
Alege tu care
elementary
ta.
school, but I think
Aia.
it's definitely harder to go to a school. So as outreach, we've
Stai așa, nu te
done.
grăbi. Acolo
We
jos,
made a Minecraft server
vezi că ai
and
două
we
slidere, da?
set
Dă
up a Twitch
slidere la
account
maxim.
to
Ia vorbește acum.
connect the teams in the FC Netherlands competition. So that's a bit more of the outreach we focus on this year.
Nu se aude, că nu crește aia. Nu se aude, nu crește
Also,
aia.
I think it's more social media, so making videos of what we're doing and how the robot is doing. So it's also really important because you can't like physically meet the other teams.
Yeah, we have the same problem with the meeting with children from elementary schools, and I would like to discuss the balance between outreach and the technical part of the competition now, because it's kind of unbalanced. Do you think that?
I'm generally my interpretation of the balance between the technical and non-technical parts of the competition is that all the non-technical aspects are generally, while not directly supporting the technical aspects, it's a lot harder for like the engineering notebook or portfolio nowadays to really be good without a good robot. And now in these days it's like a lot harder to do outreach. So a lot of the technical aspect will really be, I think, the emphasis at these competitions. I think a lot more of the competition will be decided who's advancing is going to be based on mostly who's building the best robot in quarantine, who's able to design something well without having a lot of access to parts, and then being able to put it together quickly when they do have access to parts.
Okay, I would like to ask also the other Romanian teams present this time if they want to share their experience right now about this subject.
Yeah, we have about 4 new team members, and we integrated that like David from Crack Opinion said. We made small teams. So, for example, programming, building, outreach, team management, with a maximum of 4 people inside the teams. So we can guide the new team members inside these small teams to give them specific knowledge of that part of the FTC. So that's our take on how we guide our new team members.
Also, all of our team members are already, we kind of know all of them because they're at the same school. So that's also way easier to like get to know them more and faster.
Also, to clarify, each team member is in 3 to 4 different sections. So it's not that you only do building or you only do.
So for us, there's basically 7, I believe, FL teams that work who are at our school district. So we recruited 4 new members from them, and they've integrated pretty well overall. No, it was actually 5. I can count. It was 5 new students into FTC from them, and then we got 3 other members from other FTC teams in our area who wanted to join us for one reason or another. Generally because they weren't integrated well into their own teams and they wanted to join ours. So generally that's how we recruited new people. We all met them all. We met them on Zoom before, and they all pretty much went to our school, so we knew them through that. From like a documentation perspective with engineering notebook and engineering portfolio, don't get lazy with engineering notebook. I know a lot of newer teams would see that the engineering portfolio exists and that's all you need to submit to be eligible for awards. And while it's good to spend a lot of time on that, I think especially at higher ranked competitions, a lot of the it's basically the portfolio. All you have to do, what you have to do with the portfolio is meet the requirements, and then be a polished piece, 15 pages of paper, and then have a really good notebook then. I think the engineering notebook is still going to be very important with judges' decisions. And because I think the engineering portfolio is going to be more of a weed out thing than a decision thing. It's going to be weeding out the teams that have not put the effort in versus the teams that have. So you don't want to not get weeded out and then don't have anything to follow that up with. So I've been the engineering notebook lead for my team for a couple of years, and I've worked on it all 4 years I've been in FTC. I think so basically engineering notebook still exists. There was never a page limit on it. It was always a size limit. So it could only be 4 inches thick at the binder. So if you could only have 4 pages worth of pages, inches worth of pages. Right now they've introduced the engineering portfolio, which is limited to 15 pages. You don't have to say all you said in the engineering notebook in 15 pages. What you have to say are some requirements that you can find in the game manual part 1. They're different from they read differently from the original, from what you don't have to have the same things. Generally, you have to have the goals is really important. That's a big emphasis. You have to have CAD. You pretty much always had to have CAD just because judges would always ask for it. So, or at least they did over here in the States. It's basically all the information that they would be specifically looking for condensed into 15 pages. Then, if they like your engineering portfolio, you still have to have, well, you don't actually have to have it. That's incorrect. You don't have to have it, but you're recommended to have engineering notebook, which still has the 300 pages. All you're doing is basically you're writing a 15-page summary of your 300 pages. Or in some cases, like us over in the States, it's more common to have even larger notebooks. So like we currently, like last year, we had about 500 pages. The year before, we had about 500 pages. That's more of like a regional thing, like how long generally notebooks go. I've met teams that have had 800-page plus notebooks. You don't have to go that far.
I have a question now. What's the secret to your continuity of the communication and interactions of the team? Like, how do you get along so well to make the final robot that you use for the competition?
This is, I'll speak about from the years we've been most successful. I've noticed there's been one person who has a very, like the build lead has a very strong image of what the robot should be, or they have a pretty strong idea of what they want to do and what they want to build. And then the other builders communicate and they're like, we don't like that idea, or we do like that idea, and you talk to them. But generally there's someone who has who's the lead builder, has the image, and then other people work with them. They help them, and then they're able to discuss. Also, the lead programmer also has a very big say into it. So like the programmers are saying, this won't work because we need these sensors here. They'll talk about it with lead build, but lead build generally is going to be the person who is making the final decisions, or they're making the first decision. Get everything really started.
So you do have a leader that's coordinating the whole team, that is a member of the team.
Yes. Basically, the someone who's you can have, we have team captains, and then we have leads for the section. So we have a lead programmer, lead documentation, and then lead programmer. I'm lead documentation and team captain, along with the lead programmer, who's also team captain. But that's because we're just the oldest on the team. But the person who's lead build is the most passionate. They have the biggest ideas, and it really helps to have someone who's thinking about it a lot. So if someone's thinking about and CADing a robot, and they're thinking about it like 24/7, they're gonna really inspire the team to get it built and get it done. And they'll be able to think about all the things that need to be fixed. It's more of like a leadership thing. It's just having someone who's really passionate in the lead builder position gets the robot done.
Get it, thank you.
So most of the time it's like generally an older student who just makes most sense. I think on most teams, especially ones that continue from year to year, it's pretty obvious. You're looking at all the students, you're talking to all of the people on the team, and you're like, okay, this person just happens to be the oldest and they have the most leadership tendencies. This year, we didn't have a build lead going into this year because pretty much all of our build leads are either our underclassmen. They're all pretty young. So we kind of let it go for a couple of months, and then we're like, okay, you're build lead just because you're the one who has the most passion about this. You're the one who's talking about this the most. And we just made them build lead because we needed someone who's a build lead. Leadership, I think, is pretty obvious as like a tendency. So the people who are talking the most, who are guiding others towards ideas, should generally be it. I think voting, while a good idea isn't really needed, because most teams for robotics are pretty small, and it feels weird to be voting for that because you generally just know who's going to win already.
I'd also have a question. Can I say my question?
Yeah,
Are you
so
intending to? No, go on.
Same question. So we chose our team leaders based on the experience they have. So we have a few rookie members who are obviously going to have to learn a lot still. So we just placed them as team members, and then we made some of the people from last year and the original team members the leaders of each section as they have more experience, and we pick basically the ones that we think are able to explain what they are doing. So not just do it, but also explain and teach the others.
Yeah. Are you intending to participate in any international competitions, or just the ones in the US and Netherlands, respectively?
In the United States, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go outside of, it makes sense to go between the states. So in the past, we've gone to like Indiana and West Virginia because they just had the best, like, it's just more access to trying to get to Worlds. But in the United States, it doesn't really make sense to go to like any place outside, because I'm pretty sure all of the Canadian teams actually come into the United States to qualify. I'm not sure though. And we're too far from the south to go down to Mexico. So it really makes sense to really stay in like the Midwest region.
So in previous years, we have gone to Spain for some competitions, but I'm not sure how we'll handle that this year due to, of course, travel restrictions, the coronavirus. And it's just not as safe to do so. So that really depends on how that develops.
I also have a question for
Thanks.
the current opinion. If it were for the COVID problem to worsen and you would have to do remote events, would you change your autonomy?
I think that was directed at us. So basically, our program for auto is currently it's going to probably be pretty similar. I don't know if we drastically alter our design, but currently we're designing currently for in-person. If we're forced to do remote, I think we'd be too far along in the current plan to really do a drastic change, but we definitely be able to like add like doing the second wobble goal. We've already have plans for doing that in case our partner isn't able to do it, because in Wisconsin there's a pretty wide range of like the quality of teams. So some teams can do have like at the first competition have like a fully working auto, and sometimes like they don't even have a working robot during their first competition. So we generally plan for having team members who aren't the best. So that it's pretty similar to what we'd be doing if we were forced to do a remote competition.
Adding on to what David said, the only thing that would probably change is using different sensors that could be impaired with another robot being on the field, such as distance sensors. That's about the only other thing that we might change if we were doing remote competitions.
Okay, Casimir Teh, I followed you during the last days on the social media, and I saw that you had a 5-day challenge to make the robot. What was your impression about that? What did you accomplish it? What are the results?
The robot actually turned out way better than I personally thought. But we had a lot of time because we had short days at school because they were looking into our grades and making they were just looking into that, having meetings. The teachers were having a meeting, so we had very short days, so we had a lot of time to work on the robot and work on the programming. So that's why we actually made a pretty good robot for 5 days.
Yeah, also I think personally having a goal is it's making the building progress very efficient. So you let's say you want to build the robot in 1 week. You say like our goal is to do this day the intake is done, this day the shooter is done. So you're like setting up deadlines, and I think that's really important because if you don't do that, it's just like, oh, we will do that next week. But yeah, it's also for the notebook, like our first year we just started with the notebook mid-season, but now yeah, we make deadlines, and if we do a task, we like immediately write it in the notebook.
This is a great approach, and we kind of use it often. But I would like to ask you if you set really high goals, but if you don't get to them, you get discouraged, or set only plausible goals that you really know that you will achieve, and not to dream further.
Well, actually, the goal to finish the robot in 5 days, I thought it wasn't really possible, but yeah, so it was quite a high goal to set. But because we just said it has to be done in 5 days, we all worked very serious on it, and yeah, it turned out great.
I think part of goal setting is definitely it's kind of hard to choose what is like a reasonable goal. Generally, my idea is that you set goals that you think are kind of reasonable, but you know there's going to be like parts of them that are stretched. So if you're saying, okay, we want to have a shooter done by this day, in order you can set a second part of that, which is more difficult. So we want to have a shooter that's done by this day and has like accuracy for the high goal of about 75%. Like something like that adds difficulty while it doesn't necessarily keep it from being impossible.
Okay. Regarding that, many things are online these days. Do you think it's easier or harder to organize the team and to
Nu înțeleg dacă mă aud sau nu. Acum, ba da, acum mă aud foarte bine. What? Da. Pentru că m-am pus pe microfonul de la ăsta. Înseamnă că microfonul ăsta e problema. Gata, acum trebuie să mă aud. Haide, plecați.
Across pretty much, I think, every team this year, just because the moment you're not meeting in person, a lot of people lose focus, in my general opinion. And it's harder to keep people accountable.
Și să nu faceți nici zgomot pe hol sau de fundal.
Also, because a lot of builders,
nimic să nu se audă nimic.
You're just like you want them to CAD, and they can CAD, and then it's kind of
how
it's kind of hard to CAD out something you haven't built yet, or you just have like rough ideas of how you want to build. I think there's also with the communication problem. Sometimes since you're not allowed to meet in person, or you haven't seen that person a ton in person because your school days are separated, so you don't see them a lot, it's harder to be like, we have a meeting now, you have to be here. We've definitely seen that. I think generally communications, whatever you use as your communication software of preference, it definitely has to be agreed upon to be used by everyone, and everyone has to be committed to like looking at it or whatever app you're using, whether it be like Slack or Discord.
Okay, when the season started, did you take these things into consideration, or it just came upon you and you fixed the problem right then?
So at the beginning of the competition, we were all quarantined. So everyone had to stay home because of COVID at the beginning of the season. We could start meeting 1.5 weeks after it. Generally, we fixed most of the issues. I feel like the more you meet in person, the less problems, communication, and people's desire to work go away. Generally, because the more you know each other, there's the more of the social pressure between groups of people to get stuff done, and therefore that makes people feel more responsible to get them done. So yeah, meeting in person seems to be a solution to the problem, but that's something hard to do in these days.
Okay, so I have a question for all the teams. How do you deal with targeting the tower during the driver control period? How do you position the field?
So this year we made odometry for the first year. We already started with that before before the summer break. We could meet at home with 3 people. We made the start with odometry, and when we finish it, then we can calculate the position of the robot and then aim it exactly at the high goal, because you know where it is, and if you know where the robot is, you can calculate everything. So I guess that's what we're going to use.
I have a question as well.
I'll answer Andrew's question.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh, sure.
it's since we always know where the power shot goals are, basically, we just try and line up in the same position. We also use optometry, like Jokem. So it's basically just an auto thing for the autonomous period. It's just more of just knowing where the robot is and accurate lining up, or during coverage control. We don't have any system to raise or lower our shooter, so it's just mostly about lining up in the same place and just aiming correctly.
We were thinking. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. We've also considered using angular data from a gyroscope to get lined up on the exact angle to make the shot every time, and tracking with odometry to have the robot drive itself to a position to launch the ring, and then be at the correct angle to do that.
Yeah, we were thinking of using odometry for the first year, and using trajectory or something like that, position on the field.
Yeah, currently we are just using the gyro sensor, and the odometry is still in progress, but like positioning the robot and then like pressing a button to align the robot with the toggles also works pretty well. So.
Okay, thanks.
May I ask a question now? Did you ever encounter connection issues, like if someone's internet went down, and what did you do in that case?
A lot.
I'm saying this because I had lately I had some internet issues, and I couldn't help my teammates because of that. And we were really close to a deadline, and we didn't finish our goal yet, and it was kind of hard to find a solution to that. How would you solve something like this?
We are using Trello. It's like a task manager, so everyone basically knows what they can do, also when they are at home in quarantine, and in this way we if someone doesn't know what he can do, we always have like tasks for him in the backlog.
Over here, if someone's internet goes down, it's pretty bad. We don't have any real. Generally, people know what they need to do if they're at home, so we have like general plans. So like, if you're at home as a programmer, you generally have to go back and check over all of the notebook sections that are already currently talking about the program, and see if they can be updated and work on those. Builders can always CAD. Notebook pretty much does the exact same thing at home versus in person, so it doesn't really affect the notebook team that much. Currently, we don't have a lot of internet issues over here, so it hasn't really affected us. I think part of like a nearby neighborhood's internet went down for like half a day, the most I've heard.
How do you think? How do you manage? Can you like score? Make a high score at the autonomy part. I mean, do you have any idea how you could do that? That you could high score at, I don't know, make more points?
Oh yeah. I think this year, like in previous years, autonomous was really powerful. Like if there was a team that has a full auto, they basically always won. But now I think driver control is also pretty important. So having a consistent shooter is basically the way to go, I think.
Yeah, I think he has pretty much the right idea. Definitely like the years before, so Relic, Recovery, Rover Ruckus, and Skystone were pretty like the best teams were gonna have the best auto. So the autos were always kind of the deciding factor. But there's a pretty limited factor to the autonomous. Like there's like you can only score at max. You would have your pre-loaded rings, and then you would have at most 4 rings on the field that you're able to score, because the ones that they place on the floor during auto count as preloaded according to referees. So you can score those with the autonomous. So it's only like that's like 7 shots at most during auto. So it's very limited compared to previous seasons. So I feel like while the auto is important to get a lot of points and like a lot of early setup, this year is gonna be decided by who can shoot the most rings in the least amount of time. So it's pretty much always I think the best teams are just the ones who have that's gonna be their fastest. They're gonna be the ones who can pick up the rings the fastest, and they're the ones who can shoot the rings the fastest. And that's pretty much what's gonna decide the game, unless they have a really bad autonomous.
I also think that in this season the autonomous period is a little bit too short, because you can only shoot in 2 sessions and move the wobble goal, and compared to like Skystone, there were only 2 robots that could do a 6 stone auto. So yeah, this year is like autonomous wise pretty boring, I think.
Thank you for the intervention. Speaking of the robots, about the money, how do you manage to buy those parts? I mean, from where do you get all the sponsors? I mean, to buy all the parts.
So this year, sponsorship money has been pretty much lower compared to other years. Sponsors don't just because of COVID. There's been I assume it's been a large downturn across all countries, but in the United States it's been quite bad. So there's not a lot of businesses that are just willing to give away money just for charitable causes. A lot of our money still comes from grants, because the government always seems just to have money that they're willing to give out. So basically, there's this big grant in Wisconsin from the government, from the state government, which basically controls education, and they'll give out big grants for STEM. So that's where the majority of our funding is coming from this year. In previous years, it would definitely come from sponsorships, reaching out to local businesses. We're still doing that, and there's still a few who are receptive. But yeah, our funding is going to be less this year than it is in previous years. But yeah, if you have parents who are well off, they'll generally contribute. But I don't know your people's financial situations.
Do you prefer custom parts, or go build parts or rev or something that you bought from a company?
We basically in this last year, like the previous years before that, we used a lot of custom parts. This year, since our builders are mostly more younger and new, we've transferred to more of a lot of go build parts, but we still do some custom stuff. So large parts of pretty much our entire shooter is custom, aside from the motor wheels, but aside from them, it's pretty custom. I feel like it's gonna be a lot like that for a lot of teams. Is that it's gonna be if you're older, it's generally a better idea to make custom parts, but if you're younger, generally pre-made stuff is just gonna be a lot easier. It allows you to do things a lot quicker, especially if you don't have that strong of an idea in mind of what you're trying to build.
I have another question also referring to the components used for the robot, do you usually are you usually more careful with how you structure custom parts to not use as much 3D printer filament as it would usually use, or do you just make your parts normally and don't really care about how much filament is used for them?
I think like there's like no point in being wasteful, but if you're designing a permanent part for the robot, you definitely design it with the idea of it's going to be used. So I guess if it's a prototype, you could try and avoid filament use. But if you're very certain in an idea, only work at a certain strength and need a high infill, you might as well go for it, because there's no point in using. It's like if it's gonna break, and you're testing it to see if it will break if you don't put the proper amount of material into it.
I understand. Thank you.
I would have a question. Which programming language are you using?
We're currently using Java, and we're using Android Studio to program, and we've been using that for 3 years. So the first year we started right off with Java and Android Studio, and I think that's a lot better than block programming, because there's just a lot more things you can do and possibilities to do with the program. I haven't really looked in the possibility of coding with Python. I don't know if it's possible, but when we started, Java seemed like the best option for us.
I know there are programs that can convert other languages into Java, but we just use straight up Java and Android Studio. I feel like it's just it just benefits everyone involved, because it makes it easier. You know what you're like. First off, Java is generally like a language that's pretty common that people use, and generally it doesn't really like hasn't been that difficult for new people to learn. So we just if people want to learn programming, they just learn Java and they can go use it.
All right.
Did you get the elements part from the terrain, like the wobble and the rings?
Can you repeat your question? I didn't hear.
Did you obtain the rings or the wobble? Because we didn't get them yet because of late transport. And I have a question about how heavy is the wobble?
We've received them. They're over at our school, and I can't give you an exact answer, but I would say if you hold it up, it's not that heavy. If you can either, like, if you're trying to pick it up with like it's like if it was like I would say like a strong servo or a motor can easily pick it up. It's not that much like weight. I would say it's under.
Like it is full of material or it is empty inside?
Oh, it's hollow. It is definitely hollow.
No, I think the best way to go is just to use a DC motor for more power, because servo is. I don't think that will work, but
we have this really from previous years, we had a really expensive motor that not motor servo that was really nice and it had a lot of strength. We were able to pick up the wobble goal with that. So if you just have a really expensive, strong servo lying around, that would work. If you don't want to use a motor port, but a normal motor would definitely be able to pick it up.
Did you find any use for slicer this year? Because it's the first time when I don't see any reason to use one.
So yeah, I think we have a method of picking up the wobble goal that doesn't need a linear slide, but I think for you could use a linear slide as it is yeah, a good way to pick up the wobble goal, but it isn't necessary. But I guess you have to test both methods to really know which one is better. We haven't done it yet, so I can't say which method is better, but I guess trying out will tell.
At the moment, we are like struggling a bit with the ammunition system. So we have like a box that can hold 3 rings, but sometimes it gets the rings get stuck, and yeah, we're currently working on that part, and we still need to do a lot of work, but yeah.
Have a short question. Sorry.
I was just gonna say the intake gave us a bit of trouble for a bit until we figured out a solution. I think that intakes in the shooters are probably gonna be what give the most trouble to teams. I feel like otherwise the drive trains stay pretty consistent between seasons, and unless you're doing something really weird, the wobble goal system is gonna be pretty easy.
Yeah, basically we also thought at the beginning of the season that shooter and the intake is very important. So we made a lot of prototypes for that, and for the intake we first used like a ramp and then some like traction wheels to get the rings inside the robot. But then we saw that the ramp like needs to be almost on the ground, and for us it didn't work. So we decided we need a system which can pick up the rings like from the ground. So now we have like one wheel that's squishy, that's almost on the ground, and another wheel that's that pushes the rings into that squishy wheel. So the wheels will make a upward force to like pick the rings up. But yeah, you can watch our videos for that.
The rings are squishy, or they're from hard plastic or something like that?
They're like a foam. They're a hard foam, but it's a foam nonetheless. So if you had one, you would definitely be able to like take it in your hand and squeeze it. It would be like displaced. So if you picked it up like that, like the sides would bend in and it would like form like a U shape. If you bent it like that, if you press down on it like this way, there's not a ton of give, but there's a little bit of give.
Okay.
Currently not. Currently our team is very busy. Competitions, while being moved back to where it's always kind of uncertain when things are going to happen over here. So we're kind of focused on just making sure everything with the robot's working first.
Maybe we can talk about like game strategy and the different components for the robot, like the shooter, the intake, that kind of stuff.
I'm always my focus of expertise has always been the engineering notebook and I guess now portfolio. That's what I'm always most comfortable talking about, but I don't particularly care.
Okay, question regarding the engineering portfolio and during the remote events when you're in the judging period in the live with the judges, do you take in consideration presenting your engineering notebook then, not the portfolio, and show it?
So for judges, when we're talking to judges, generally, while we have mentioned in the past like specific parts of the notebook to look at for more detail regarding things we talked about in the report regarding our thing, I think that would stay the same. I don't think there's any, like, your engineering portfolio, they're going to read through in full. So they'll see everything in it, most likely, unless they're like truly, it's only like, unless for some strange reason they don't do that. I don't see why. It's only 15 pages. Like, even if it's a lot of teams, they should be able to get through 15 pages quite quickly. So I don't think there's any point to specifically pointing out a page in the portfolio. There's definitely a reason to point out specific things in the notebook. But if you really feel the need to point it out, it should definitely be mentioned in your portfolio, because that's a thing to recommend anyways. They should be like, first recommends in the engineering portfolio, you should be pointing out any specific pages in the notebook you would like them to read. That will add greater detail to what you're discussing.
Thank you very much for the advice. And we're really thinking about these two, but they are really hard content and long. And there is text and the pictures. And how do you put it in the engineering portfolio as to be balanced and really to the point?
So the way we're approaching it is basically we're thinking about it as if we're looking at what's the most important things that we know for sure they need. So if you go into game manual part 1, they make it pretty explicit for each award what they're requiring from you. So we're looking through that, and you kind of can just tick off boxes of what you know you need, and then we're like, okay, what else? How can we do this more? Like, what can we take from our notebook and change so that it gives more information quicker? So I'll talk about the engineering content specifically. So traditionally we use pictures in a lot of our robot, a lot in our building section, but this year we're probably gonna put a lot more CAD in there, just because they want for like the design award, they specifically want a lot of pictures for CAD. So if we put a lot of cat images in there, it's increasing our chances for that. They're not going to miss that and not disqualify us for design. The Innovate Award for engineering content, she needs like all it says is that it must include example of the team's engineering content that illustrate how the team arrived at their design solution. So that would be, I feel like tables, if they're well made, can deliver a lot of content quickly. So you can just do a SWOT analysis page or just a pro and con table. If you just do those, be like, okay, this is why we made this decision. So the pros of this decision were, the cons of this solution were, this is why we chose it over this solution. The shooter, we decided to use wheels instead of zip ties because of blank, blank, blank. Make it the implicit, because that's all they're, like the sentences can just be really direct and to the point. You don't have to make it as wordy as you would in the engineering notebook.
Thank you very much for your experience that you shared. It's really important for us. I was also I wanted to ask you about how you prepare your team members for the judging period when you are in remote events.
So
like, you have to evaluate the points, the high score, and that.
So the way we prepare for judging events, we've kind of just gotten used to like we haven't gone to a lot of events this year, but as like a team, so like I've been doing this for 4 years, so I've been gone to a ton of events, and I kind of just know a lot of judges' questions. So for new kids, what you can basically do is that you either keep a list of what judges have asked you in the past, or you can just like remember, okay, how would you answer this question? How would you do them? Because you're just doing it by yourselves. And just like, well, a question we get asked a lot is, what's the best part of this robot? And then all the builders can get together and it's like, what's the part we actually put the most analysis into? And they'll talk about that part, and they'll talk about how they worked on it and how they thought about it. And they can get that down pretty succinct, because you also want to be succinct in your judges' answers, because you want the judges to be able to ask you as many questions as they have. They thought about it, and they can get that down pretty succinct, because you also want to be succinct in your and if they don't have more questions asked, you can just say things that you thought they should have asked.
Thank you. I think we're done with today's session. It was an honor to have you here, and we're waiting you tomorrow for this year's competition, and about programming and about the robot. And we'll see you tomorrow, I guess. As I said, it was an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Before you guys all go, I have an announcement to make. We, Casimir Tech, launched a Minecraft server, and we're planning on making it international. And I thought this is the best opportunity